400 feet down in the waters of the Aegean Sea lies the Britannic, one of the largest, most luxurious passenger liners ever built. The Titanic sister ship went down 80 years ago, but the cause of her sinking is still a mystery. August 1995, off the island of Crete. Explorer Dr. Robert Ballard, who discovered the Titanic in 1985, has now set his sights on the Britannic, her forgotten sister ship.
Is that Italian or no, the one that's pulling out the boat?
This is a major expedition with no expense spared.
Better to be light than heavy.
Together with 3 historians, Ballard will be using the latest technology to explore the Britannic's secrets. The mission has even been supplied with the US Navy submarine. The White Star Line built 3 of the largest passenger liners of their day. The Titanic has always held the world's imagination, but the fate of her sister ship is equally mysterious. The Britannic was sunk while serving as a hospital ship during World War I. To this day, no one knows if she hit a mine meant for a military target or was attacked in cold blood by a German submarine. Historian Simon Mills is the only person to have written a book about the Britannic. His colleague Eric Sauder is an expert on the doomed White Star Line. Together with Ken Marshall, a leading marine artist, they hope the expedition will resolve the mystery of the Britannic. The technical accuracy of Ken's work has made him invaluable to Ballard in the past.
Yeah, this is a painting that I did about 5 years ago of the Britannic as we think it may have looked to see a twin sister ship of the Titanic, virtually identical in most respects, her dimensions and so forth, to sense the size of that ship on the ocean floor, and particularly in a shallow enough depth where I can actually see the ship with filtered sunlight coming through the ocean. It should be an eerie and awesome experience.
So a course of 210 from his present position will take him parallel to the contour. Yeah, probably have him that way then when he bottoms.
For Bob Ballard, the discovery of the Titanic was the highlight of his career so far. But since 1985, she has been systematically stripped to create a museum on land. Bob's vision now is to create a museum under the sea.
I've been really searching for the optimum piece of history to experiment on and try to create the first undersea museum. I thought it might have been the Lusitania, but when we went out there, it was so tragic to see how destroyed it was. There's certain things we must preserve. I mean, the Titanic was incredible. The feelings, the power of going there was like going to Gettysburg the day after the battle. Why should I be the only one that gets to go to a place and as soon as I leave, it's leveled? That's what's really brought me here to the Britannic. It has not been pillaged in very few years. The technology will make it possible for people in the luxury of their homes on the information highway to visit this site live. I would love to protect this ship, set it aside, and let people visit it. And I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna give it my best shot at it.
Ballard is gambling that after 80 years underwater, the Britannic will be in good enough condition to display as the first undersea museum. But together with David Olivier, the submarine commander, he must first locate the wreck.
Tomorrow morning, the sun get there, and then your divers in the water. We put our divers in the water to put the cameras and the strobes on, and then we'll get ready to do our first reconnaissance submergence.
The expedition makes its way from Crete to the waters off the island of Key. The Britannic lies somewhere here, 400 feet below the surface of the Aegean. On the support ship, the historians set up operations.
Unfortunately, she never made it that far. 5 voyages, that was it.
Yeah, what a shame. What a shame. White Star struck out so badly with the big three. You know, the Olympic, the first of the big three, the 3 twin sister ships. The first one, Olympic, was the only one to make it through a long, successful career. Titanic sank on her first voyage, and Britannic never carried a paying passenger.
She lasted less than a year.
Less than a year.
The Britannic and her sister ships were among the first of a new breed of superliner. Supposed to be the biggest, safest ships ever, they were to revolutionize transatlantic travel. Their upper decks catered to the wealthy, but the real money was made down below.
Immigrants, millions of immigrants. By 1905 was the first million-passenger year for the North Atlantic liners, wanted to get from the old world to the new. And the only way they could go was by sea, and that accounts for 2 things. First, the enormous number of ocean liners that were built for the North Atlantic, and second, their incredible size.
Belfast today. In the deserted corners of the Harland and Wolff shipyard, visible reminders of the massive effort it took to build these superliners, the pride of the White Star Line. First came the Olympic. Then the legendary Titanic. And lastly, the Britannic, the forgotten sister. The magnificent interiors of these ships have either been lost to the ocean depths or dismantled and preserved on land. This room is all that remains of the Olympic.
We're in the White Swan Hotel in the interior of the lounge of the Olympic. It's all that we have left from her. There are bits and pieces of her all over England, but perhaps nothing quite as lovely as the lounge. And it's a splendid reminder of those fabulous days of 1911, 1912, before the war, before all these wonderful ships were swept away. A gilded era.
For all the lavish decor, the White Star Line was even prouder of its technological innovations. Building the Olympic and the Titanic in just 4 years was probably Harland and Wolff's greatest achievement. When they were launched, they were held as virtually unsinkable, thanks to a revolutionary safety system. The Olympic-class ships were designed with 15 transverse bulkheads extending above the waterline. These created 16 compartments separated by massive watertight doors. In the event of flooding, the captain could instantly close those doors from the bridge by means of an electric switch. A backup mechanism allowed the doors to be closed both manually and by a float mechanism. Damage could be sustained to any 2 adjoining compartments or the first 4 starting at the bow without endangering the ship. This safety system was so radical that even the most reputable British shipbuilding magazines called the Olympic class practically unsinkable.
That word unsinkable came actually from the great Bible of the British shipping industry called the Shipbuilder and Marine Engine Builder. This was the great journal of shipping that every new ship appeared in, and lengthy articles were written about the ship and all the safety systems. And in this article, they talked about the watertight compartments, which every ship had, and it said if these doors were closed, it would render the ship practically unsinkable. Fair enough. Well, somebody grabbed unsinkable, not the White Star Line, out of that report and circulated it on both sides of the Atlantic as though Titanic were unsinkable.
It was tempting fate. As the construction of the Britannic began, the greatest maritime disaster of this century was about to strike. Titanic collided with an iceberg on her maiden voyage and sank in less than 3 hours. Some 1,500 people drowned. The limitations of her much-touted safety system were now tragically clear.
It came through here, started scraping along, scraping off rivet heads, buckling the plates, tearing the seams apart. Not a big gash like a can opener, but just a scraping that buckled the plates in. Went from here for about 240 feet or so aft, 2 feet into the coal bunker of boiler room number 5. The bow started to sink. The water eventually, inevitably, came up over that bulkhead and flowed into the next compartment and into the next, and it was just a mathematical certainty, plain and simple. No matter how you sliced it, the ship's going down.
The disaster stunned the world. White Star immediately recalled Olympic from service and halted construction on Britannic. Harland and Wolff set about correcting every flaw that could have contributed to Titanic's demise.
In the case of the Britannic, that was fairly easy to do because the ship had not advanced very far in terms of its construction. In the case of the Olympic, the reconstruction was so extensive that it took the ship out of service for 6 months.
Belfast, February 1914. Britannic was finally launched. She was hailed by her shipping line and her builders to be as perfect a specimen of man's creative power as is possible to conceive. But as she slid into the sea, another cataclysm awaited her, the war that would soon engulf Europe and the entire world. Even as the last of her grand interiors were being installed, the Britannic was requisitioned by the British Admiralty. Transformed into a hospital ship, she made just 5 missions to the Mediterranean before sinking mysteriously on her 6th outbound voyage. Today, she lies at the bottom of a sea she was never intended to sail, a casualty of war, her mysteries as yet unsolved, the object of Dr. Ballard's search. Tomorrow, Ballard will make his first dive on the Britannic.
Well, we're at the end of the first day, and we're transiting north from Crete, from this sub-base we just left. And sometime tomorrow morning we'll arrive on scene. The ship was traveling northeast. It struck something, whether there was a torpedo or a mine. The captain immediately began to try to save his ship and beach it, so he began a quick turn to starboard and heading back to Kea, but before he got to the beach, he sank right there. This is where the British say they were sunk, and this is where Cousteau 20 years ago said he actually found the ship, so obviously we believe his position more.
In 1975, Jacques Cousteau had made the first search for the Britannic. His discovery of the wreck was complicated by misleading coordinates reported by the British Admiralty in 1916. They were out by 8 miles, as Cousteau was later to find out.
But we've got to relocate it. We don't know exactly where it is. So the first and foremost, we'll, transit over from the support ship, get in the sub, and go down and find it.